Former British Foreign Secretary Lord David Owen says the threat of military action can actually strengthen diplomacy and the prospects for peace. He served as the EU's peace mediator in the former Yugoslavia from 1992 to 1995. In an article, sir, that you wrote for the Guardian newspaper in June last year, a year ago now, you suggested that to use force against the Syrian army means NATO or US forces in a multinational grouping. Russia and China, it seems, still don't trust either agreement. So what have we learned from the Balkans so far as the guise of intervention, if there were to be any, is concerned, that might help now?
Well, I think it was a great mistake for Warren Christopher to rule out enforcing a peace settlement in Bosnia in February of 1993. It meant that Mladic, the general, who took very little notice of anything that was said, just felt he had a free run, and that's what happened until Srebrenica. So the other lesson, I think, coming out of this is the longer these type of wars go on, which are religious and ethnic in their basis, the longer it is more difficult to get a settlement, and also the longer that you are more likely to end up with a partition of the country.
Let's be clear, it was Russia's involvement in the use of force, be that diplomatic rather than strategic and physical, that ultimately allowed for an end to the Bosnian conflict, wasn't it? Is this something that we are missing at this point in Syria?
Well, Russia wasn't involved. It was a NATO action, but it's true to say...
Behind the scenes...
Russia had cooperated with us during that period, all through the negotiations, at times a little difficult, a little doing, but overall they cooperated in the Security Council. There's been a total absence of any cooperation, largely because China and Russia feel we took advantage of them over Libya. I supported the Libya intervention. I think it was right to stop Benghazi being overrun by Gaddafi forces. And we have to consider what would happen, say, Aleppo was being overrun by aircraft and by tanks of the Assad regime.
I want our viewers to get a sense of where we stand this week so far as the UN envoy to Syria is concerned. That, of course, these days is Lakhdar Brahimi. And this is what he said on Tuesday with reference to what has been an ongoing discussion about an international peace conference. Just have a listen to this.
Frankly, I doubt whether the conference will take place in July. The opposition are, they are meeting, I think their next meeting is on the 4th and 5th of July. So I don't think they will be ready.
I think he said also what is happening in the region is extremely, extremely serious. Who is holding up this regional conference, and is it a good idea?
Well, he's never been given the support from the Security Council that he deserves. I think he's an excellent man. He's a former Algerian foreign minister, because the Security Council is split. France, Britain, and the United States wants action, and China and Russia don't unless we talk to them and listen to their criticisms of what happened in Libya. And there's been a total absence of discussion. I've for a long time been urging a meeting of the NATO-Russian Council to discuss their criticisms of what happened in Libya. And what he needs more than anything else is to be able to enforce a ceasefire. Say he gets a ceasefire through negotiation, which is the fundamental thing, and we go into a conference, he needs to know that that ceasefire will hold. We didn't have that assurance, so Kofi Annan's ceasefire, which was the earlier negotiator, failed miserably.
It seems so long ago.
Force has to work with negotiations. They have to be able to work together.
I understand. Lakhdar Brahimi also said that Russia and the US have to get their acts together. He wasn't just pointing a finger at Russia.
No, he's quite right. Russia has got legitimate grievances. I support and still do what happened in Libya. I think it would have been impossible to have stood by and done nothing.
Despite the mess now?
There's a bit of a mess. It's not perfect by any means, but I think the alternative was to see Benghazi overrun, and that we had to intervene. And overall, it's broadly a success, not a total success. Now, we are seen as forcing regime change. Russia and China won't support that. What they will support, I think, is enforcement of a ceasefire negotiation if somebody flagrantly breaks it. Now, that means you've got to have some understanding with Russia as to what is the evidence for enforcement. And basically it means NATO and Russia has to cooperate more. The days of just thinking only NATO would go in for a ceasefire enforcement, I think, are over.
Which was a great lesson learned during the conflict in the Balkans.
We had, in Dayton, we had Russia working with NATO forces after the Dayton Agreement. And even before, Russia was on the ground in the UN forces.
What are your biggest fears at this point?
My biggest fear is this just goes on and on. I think this must be a regional conference, the sooner the better. I personally think that Iran should be at the table, and I think Israel should be at the table. And I think the less we see of the negotiations directly between Russia and United States, shades of 1919 and the Paris Peace Conference, and the more we see regional negotiations, the better. And ending this will require a regional settlement. We already see Lebanon involved. Look what happened to Beirut, only in living memory. And that could happen again. And we also see what's happening with the Kurds that have been given virtual autonomy in the north. It's spreading everywhere.